What do you mean by input operator like C in? What do you mean by output operator, that is C out? Where it has to be used, regarding that you will come to know on this 9th chapter. In spreadsheet you have 4 experiments, whereas in web designing there you have 2 experiments in the lab session. In the second chapter, that is input output memory devices, there the total weightage of this chapter is once again 6 marks in the annual exam. Welcome to one and all. Myself, Vasanta, lecturer in Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysore. Today, we want to start with the first session, especially the introduction regarding Computer Science syllabus in first PUC. Whereas this is a textbook you have to follow for first PUC. This is a prescribed textbook from the pre-university. When you come on the chapters, the first chapter you have overview of computer system. On this chapter, you will study regarding the fundamentals of the computers like generations. What do you mean by generation? Types of generations. Who is the father of the computer? How in the older they are using? What is the difference between nowadays as well as older system? Regarding that, you will come to know. In second chapter, input-output memory devices. What do you mean by input device, output device? Which are the types of input devices, output devices, memory? Regarding that, you will come to know in the second chapter. Whereas in third chapter, you have data representation. On this data representation chapter, you will study especially regarding the number system like binary numbers, octal numbers, hexadecimal numbers, how it can be converted, how it can be stored. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the fourth chapter, you have software concept. On this software concept chapter, you will study regarding what do you mean by software, which are the types of software, what are the advantages of software. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the fifth chapter is problem solving methodology. In this chapter, you will study regarding which are the types of methods to solve the problem. Top-down approach, bottom-up approach, all the things, which are the types of programming concept there. Serial, sequential, what do you mean by serial, sequential, selection, all the control statements you will come to know on this chapter. And the sixth chapter is programming in C++. Programming in C++. Whereas from here only, you will start studying programming concept. Whereas the next chapter, introduction to C++. Here the basic concept, the general structure of C++, regarding that you will come to know. Whereas the 8th chapter, you will come to know regarding the data types. What do you mean by data types? Which are the data types? When it has to be used? What are the major advantages of regarding that? You will come to know. Whereas the next chapter is input-output operators. What do you mean by input operator like C in? What do you mean by output operator, that is C out? Where it has to be used? Regarding that, you will come to know on this 9th chapter. Whereas in the 10th chapter, you will study regarding control statements. What do you mean by control statement? Which are the types of control statement like if else, if, nested, for loop, while loop, do while loop, everything you will study on this 10th chapter. Whereas the 11th chapter is array. On this chapter also, you will study regarding what do you mean by array, different types of array, how to initialize the array, how to access the array elements, and how to declare that. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the 12th chapter is functions. What do you mean by functions? Then which are the types of functions? All those things you will study on this functions chapter. Whereas the 13th chapter is user-defined functions. What do you mean by user-defined functions and the types of that? Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the 14th chapter, you have structures. In this also, how to declare the structure, what do you mean by structure, how exactly it will work, what is the difference between array and structure. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the 15th chapter, you have word processing regarding Microsoft Word. There, how to create a word or how to create a Word document, how to insert a picture, how to give the table, how to give the different colors, watermark for your document, how to align that, how to increase the size of the document or how to decrease, how to make use of word processor. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the next chapter, that is chapter number 16, spreadsheet. On this, you will study electronic spreadsheet, that is nothing but Excel. There, how to create the table, how to apply the formula, how to access the data from one table to another table. Regarding that, you will come to know. Whereas the last chapter is web designing chapter. In this web designing chapter, you will study regarding especially HTML, how to create a web page, how to access, how to develop one web page, then which are the different types of tag. Regarding that, you will come to know in this last chapter. Whereas in spreadsheet, you have 4 experiments, whereas in web designing, there you have 2 experiments in the lab portions. But when you come on the total weightage of the chapter, the first chapter, that is overview of computer. On this chapter, totally you will get in the annual exam 8 marks. Totally in the exam you have 4 parts, part A, part B, part C and part D. In part A, each question carries 1 marks. In part B, each question carries 2 marks. In part C, each question carries 3 marks. Whereas in part D, each question carries 5 marks. Whereas in the first chapter, in part A, you will get 1 question. In part B, also 1 question. As well as in part D, 1 question. Total weightage of the first chapter is 8 marks. In the second chapter, that is input-output memory devices, there the total weightage of this chapter is once again 6 marks in the annual exam. There also, in part A, they will ask 1 question for 1 marks. Then in part B, 1 question, as well as in part C, 1 question. 1 marks, 2 marks, here 3 marks. Totally 6 marks weightage. In this also you will get what do you mean by input devices, which are the input devices, how exactly it will work, which are the secondary storage devices like hard disk, floppy disk, that is regarding memory. All those type of questions you will get. The next one is data representation chapter. This is the third chapter. The total weightage of this chapter is 8 marks in the annual exam. Out of 8 marks, in part C 1 question as well as in part D 1 question you will get. Whereas you are not going to get any question from part A as well as part B. Only in part C for 3 marks as well as in part D for 5 marks. Totally 8 marks you will get on this data representation chapter. It's a very easiest chapter. Only the calculation work will be there here. The next 4th chapter, that is software concept. On this chapter, the total weightage in the annual exam is 5 marks. Out of 5 marks, in part B 1 question as well as in part C 1 question you will get. For 2 marks 1 question as well as for 3 marks 1 question. Total weightage will be 5 marks. The next, that is 5th chapter, that is problem solving methodology. This chapter having highest weightage 11 marks in the annual exam. And on this chapter, in each and every main, you will get 1 question. That is in part A 1 question, in part B 1 question, part C 1 question, part D 1 question. 1 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks as well as 5 marks. Okay, this highest weightage chapter, that is problem solving methodology. Next, the 6th chapter, that is object-oriented concept. Object-oriented concept. Whereas the weightage of this chapter is only 2 marks in the annual exam. Only 1 question you will get, that is in part B for 2 marks. Like, what do you mean by class? What do you mean by object? What do you mean by inheritance? List the types of inheritance, advantages, disadvantages as well as application you may going to get. Next one, Introduction to C++, that is the 7th chapter. On this chapter, the total weightage is 9 marks in the annual exam. Out of 9 marks, in part A 1 question you will get, in part C 1 question as well as in part D 1 question. 1 marks, 3 marks, 5 marks. Totally 9 marks you will get from this chapter. The next chapter is data types. This chapter having only 2 marks weightage in the annual exam. Only 1 question you will get, that is in part B for 2 marks. Like, what do you mean by data type? List the different types of data type. Like that, you may going to get the questions. Next one, input-output operators. What do you mean by operators? Which are the input operators? Which are the output operators? Regarding that, you will study. But the total weightage here, 4 marks in the annual exam. In part A, you will get 1 question, as well as in part C also 1 question. 1 mark as well as here 3 marks. Totally 4 marks you will get in the annual exam. Next, 10th chapter, that is control statement. This also having highest weightage, that is 11 marks in the annual exam. In this, in part E, you will get only 1 question, but in part D, you will get 2 questions. Each question carries 5 marks. Like write the difference between while and do while, or difference between if else if, like that you will get the question from this chapter. It's a very important chapter. If you know this concept, then easily you can able to write the programs also. The next chapter, that is chapter 11, that is arrays. Here also the total weightage in the annual exam will be 9 marks. Out of 9 marks, in part A 1 question, in part C 1 question, as well as in part D 1 question. Here 1 marks, 3 marks, 5 marks, totally 9 marks you will get from this chapter. Here also you will get the programs like what do you mean by arrays, how to access the array element, or how to display the array elements, types of arrays. Regarding that, you will get the questions. The 12th chapter is functions. Here the total weightage in the annual exam will be only 2 marks. Only 1 question in part B you will get for 2 marks. Regarding what do you mean by functions, regarding that you will come to know. Then the next chapter is, that is chapter number 13, user-defined functions. User-defined function, the total weightage will be 6 marks in the annual exam. There in part A 1 question for 1 marks, as well as in part D 1 question you will get. Totally 6 marks you will get from this chapter, that is user-defined functions. Next chapter, chapter number 14, their structures. On this chapter, the total weightage will be only 3 marks. That in part C, only 1 question you will get, like what do you mean by structure, or how to declare a structure, how to access the structure element, like that you may going to get the questions. The next chapter, chapter number 15, that is word processing. It's the easiest chapter. In this, easily you can score good marks because only 2 questions you will get, that is for 3 marks. In part A 1 question, as well as in part B 1 question. Whereas in spreadsheet also, but here it's the highest weightage here also, that is 11 marks. There in part A 1 question, as well as in part D you will get 2 questions, like write the applications of spreadsheet, where we are using the spreadsheet, how the layout of the spreadsheet, how exactly it will look, then which are the applications of a spreadsheet. Regarding that you will get the questions. For these questions you can write the answers on your own words, then also you will get the full marks. Like what do you mean by built-in functions, which are the different types of built-in functions, or where we are using, how the structure of Excel will look. Regarding that you will get the questions on this spreadsheet. And the last chapter is web designing. The total weightage of this chapter is 5 marks. Only 1 question you will get on part D for 5 marks. Like write the general structure of HTML, or write a program, explain different types of tag. Regarding that you will get the questions on this chapter. Totally 17 chapters you have in the first PUC computer science subject. Now we will discuss about the theory examination as well as practical examination. In the theory, you will get 70 marks, maximum 70 marks for theory and 30 marks for your practical. Only theory you will write only for 70 marks and the remaining 30 will be practicals. Total 100 marks for computer science. But for other subjects, what you will doing? For 100 marks only you will write all the theories. No, whereas here only 70 marks theory and the remaining 30 will be practicals. Now we will discuss how many parts are there. Already I told you totally 4 parts, part A, part B, part C, part D. In part A you will get 10 questions. In part A 10 questions, each carries 1 mark, total 10 marks. In part B, there also each question carries 2 marks. In part C, each question carries 3 marks. In part D, each question carries 5 marks. But in part A, B as well as in part C, 5 questions you have to write. Whereas in part D, 7 questions you have to write, totally 70 marks. for theory. Now, when we come on blueprint, there totally we have 4 units A, B, C, D. In first part, unit A 24 marks, part B 19 marks, part C 49 marks, part D 15 marks. Now is it clear? Next class, we will meet you once again with the first chapter, that is the overview of computer system. Thank you for all of you.